Blog Talk Radio.
Together we can do this thing. Are you ready? Are you ready? I move your body like a hairy troll. I'm learning to rock and roll. I spin around like a crazy elf. A dancing by himself. I boogie down like a unicorn. I know stopping till the break of dawn. I put your hands up in the air. Like an ogre, just don't care. Can you dance the hypocrite? Mama, 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 mama. Flying off from a cliff. Mama, 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 mama. Swooping down to the ground. Mama, 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 mama. Wheel around and around and around and around. Mama, 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 mama. Oh, going around like a scary ghost. Spoken in itself the most. Like a bugger in pain. Again and again and again. Get it on like an angry spectre.
Is that me, or does that sound a lot like Nick Cave in the Bad Seeds? I'm sure I've actually been told it's probably Nick Cave in the Bad Seeds, and I plumb forgot or something like that. Who knows? Anywho, this is Long Road to Ruin. I am your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified host, Mr. Mark Radulich. This is the fourth part of a four-part series on the Harry Potter movies. The last two in the series, the Deathly Hallows, Part 1 and Part 2. So we are shutting it down tonight with all things Harry Potter and magical and mystical. No lists or anything. No, we're going to get right into these movies. There's a lot to talk about. We should be joined at some point by our special guest and Harry Potter enthusiast, Alexis Hejna. But while we wait for her, let me bring on my co-host, Mr. Sean Comer. How do you do, sir?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sean. You're not. And welcome to what is a very kind of special occasion for you and I. Do we want to save that for the end of the show, or do we want to go ahead and just put that out there now while we're waiting for Alexis?
I think because we're waiting for Alexis, let's just go ahead and stall. I mean, talk about it now. Let me go first. Yeah. Let me go first here and just put something out there. I talked a little bit about this on Damn You Hollywood and the Metal Hammer of Doom, though apparently my mic kept cutting out on me last night, so who knows what anyone heard. So this is probably going to be the last year for Long Road to Ruin, and if you did not hear the announcement on Damn You Hollywood, we are not doing a show as I had planned for the first 2 months of. There's some personal stuff going on with me, not having another baby. There's no exodus happening, but there'll still be Metal Hammer of Doom every week, just about. But I just so there were certain elements of doing both Damn You Hollywood and Long Road to Ruin that have become untenable. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Damn You Hollywood is still going to come back in March. We're going to do 3 shows in March. We'll do 1 show in April, and then from May through the end of July, we'll be pretty much going weekly. And then we'll go back to a limited schedule again, because I still want to keep the summer blockbuster theme at the very least. We'll see what happens. But for the next 2 months, I gotta keep it cool. So having said that, Winfrey still has another show to do. So he's got the MMA show. So there'll still be plenty of Winfrey available for you Winfrey fans out there on Sundays, talking the old MMA. So what of Sean and I? We have decided that we would still like to continue podcasting, but maybe retire Long Road to Ruin permanently after the December show, which is the Cornetto trilogy. It's going to be the last one, and starting in January, we're going to do something brand new and exciting. It's still going to be revolving around movies, but it's not going to be franchises as such. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and I'm going to let Sean fill in the blanks. We're going to be talking about one film per show. We're going to try to do every other week like we used to do with Long Road to Ruin. And it's a different concept. Still in the film review milieu, but a little bit different. Something that I was telling Sean that I had been toying with earlier in the year and just never got the time to really get it going. So I'll let Sean sort of tag in here and talk about our new show, which will be called On Trial. Sean?
Well, this really isn't all that unlike a few shows that you've done already. You've heard Mark pipe up every so often with a special guest here and there doing an In Defense Of special. When we very first started doing this show, in fact, I guess you could say, moderated debate with, I forget who you were debating against. And I think...
It was my
Oh, yeah. I want to say the debate, I believe, was Revenge of the Sith versus Return of the Jedi. I may be remembering that incorrectly. Correct. Oh, I did get it right. Oh, okay. Oh, good.
No, you're right.
Okay. And after that, he did several more. He did an In Defense of the Big Bang Theory with his wonderful wife, Melissa. He did an In Defense of Superman Returns. And we decided to take that.
Man of Steel.
And sort of Man of Steel, right, sorry. And we decided to take that idea and tweak it and polish it a little bit. So this is actually going to be a more organized format for the two of us. The way it's going to work is we're going to pick a movie. It could be any movie. It could be an all-time classic. It could be a cult favorite. It could be an utter infamous B-movie turkey. You never know. And by the way, at the end of explaining this, I will in fact reveal what our first movie is. But, oh boy, the echo's back. Goody. And I feel like the luckiest man. Oh, fuck you, Echo. Cut it out, just making a joke. That is, God damn you, blog talk. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to pick a movie, and we're going to do this old school, high school National Forensics League style. We don't get to pick a side necessarily. It's going to be entirely up to chance. We're going to flip a coin to decide who's going to be arguing this movie is excellent versus this movie is shit. We don't know from one movie to the next who's going to be arguing which side. The only thing, though, is we're going to switch off who picks the movie each time out. And I've already got several of them in mind, as does Mark. However, we're going to start with one of my all-time favorite cult classic movies. It is one of John Carpenter's finest works, and it is arguably one of Kurt Russell's very finest hours of his prime. As if there's any doubting it, I am talking about not Escape from New York. No, we are going to be talking about Big Trouble in Little China. And we're just going to go back and forth in a civil, friendly manner. No, you're not getting ranty, acerbic, trash-talking Sean back. Probably never again. Although, I don't know. I am jumping in on the Saw review next October. So, I shouldn't promise what I can't deliver. But, as the case may be, that's what it's going to be. From 1 week to the next, we're going to know what the next movie is, but at the end of each show, we're going to do an on-air coin toss. That's going to decide which of us is going to have about 2 weeks to build our case either for or against this movie. And along the way, there's another show idea that Mark and I had, one that he suggested we should just kind of throw out there intermittently, and I'm going to toss it back to him to explain this one. It's an idea we've had in mind for a little bit.
Okay, well, part of what's informing the kinds of things we're going to be reviewing in 2017 revolves around what is streamable on services I currently pay for. I currently pay for Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime. So basically anything that I'm getting as part of that service for free is fair game. If it's going to cost me money to rent it, yes. I shouldn't have to depend too much unless I get very, synergistic again. Oh, Blade Runner's out. We have to do Blade Runner. Whatever. I'm trying to not do that this year. That's what got me in trouble. I'm a brand marketer or something. I'm a goddamn social worker. I should try to remember that.
Hey, don't mock brand marketers.
So, I was not mocking them. I'm just not one of them. I like to think that I am. In any case, Sean and I started doing the Netflix show Orange is the New Black. We started it in parts, and then that became untenable, and so we said, let's try to just sum it all up in 2 hours. And then Winfrey and I started in with the Netflix Marvel shows. We did Daredevil. That also started out in parts, but shortly after that, I said, no more doing these in parts. We're doing them in one show. So we did Daredevil, we did Luke Cage, we did Jessica Jones. Pat and I did Fuller House Season 1. And Fuller House Season 2 actually drops in a couple of weeks. So Pat and I will be doing that again. And Robert Cooper and I did Voltron Legendary Defender. So I opened up the idea to Sean, and Sean and I had actually talked about this on Long Road to Ruin. We did it once with the animated Batman series, but we had this long conversation about there's so many TV shows that we would like to talk about, and we just never really got a chance to. Well, God, if there's one thing Netflix and Hulu are known for, is that they're dirty with television shows, both old and new. So we're going to dig into a lot of the ideas that we had over the last couple of years and present them as 2-hour reviews, the same as I just laid out with previous ones, the Marvel shows, Full House, et cetera, et cetera. We haven't quite nailed down which one and when we're gonna do that. There's, like I said, there's already TV show reviews, and I've dubbed this now TV Party Tonight. There's season 2 of Voltron is already on the schedule. Iron Fist is already on the schedule. House, as I said, is already on the schedule for season 2. Sean and I are going to fill in some of the dates that currently don't have shows with some of the stuff that we talked about from the past that we liked. The slate of DC animated shows like Young Justice, Justice League Unlimited, Batman Beyond, which I did not watch. So, it'll be new to me. other TV shows. I've talked Oz to death and The Wire, so probably not those. But there's plenty of other shows on Netflix that I didn't get a chance to watch when they first came out, like Narcos, that I wouldn't mind talking about. I've never seen a single season of Sons of Anarchy. Time is ending. So just stay tuned for that. Keep up on the FX shows after The Shield went off the air. You're surprised, huh? I've never seen a single episode of Sons of Anarchy.
Well, no. The problem is the phone is doing this weird thing where there's about a 3-second delay between there's a 3-second delay between when you hear my voice and when I can hear it in the background. So I think it's coming across to you on a delay. I think that's the problem.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
Gotcha. Tell you what, Mark. Keep talking. I'm actually going to get off the phone for a second and, number one, try to get Alexis on the call. And then also, I'm going to – well, back here, I'll just call her while I'm on the line and then see if maybe that helps. So, yeah, keep talking while I call the Squirrel Queen up.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's the plan. We've got 2 shows scheduled for January for On Trial. We're going to put Big Trouble in Little China on trial, and that's going to debut on January 12th. And then on January 26th, we're going to put Inception on trial, another movie that I bought and never saw. Actually, I didn't buy it. My brother-in-law bought it for me for Christmas, insisting that it was a wonderful movie, just simply fantastic. Couldn't say enough good things about it, and I've never seen it. And every year he asks me. In fact, every time he sees me, he says, "If you still see..." This was many, many years ago that he bought this movie for me, and he asks me all the time, "Hey, have you seen Inception?" Nope. Saw Doctor Strange. Does that count? But I have not seen Inception. So I'm gonna. We have a phone. We have a ringer.
Yeah, it's me trying to call Alexis.
Hi, this is Alexis with Honeysuckle Rose Creations. I'm afraid I can't get to my phone right now, but if you please leave your name, number, and time that you called, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Hi, Alexis. It's Sean and Mark. Guess where you were supposed to be about 20 minutes ago? Don't worry. We'll call back. Don't worry.
She might have thought the show was 9:30. I mean, I started the show earlier just because I started the show earlier just because I used to do some running at night, but I've been able to get some exercise done during the day now, so I don't need to have that extra half an hour to go run and dry off. As I was saying, starts January 12th, and then we'll do another one on January 26th. Big Trouble in Little China, then Inception. It's not changing at all. Metal Hammer of Doom is just taking a week off the first week of January, and then we're back on the 11th with a Clutch retrospective part 2. We're calling it Clutch Deep Cuts, B-Sides, and Covers. Then we'll be reviewing Selling Messiah, my friend's band. My drummer in my old band is a drummer in this band now. A new album not that long ago called If He Dies. Oops, lost my page. If the band is called If He Dies, the album is called Beneath the Waves. We're gonna do a favor for them and review that, and then February 1st we'll review the new Creator album, Gods of Violence. And I doing on the 24th of January, Legendary Defender. So, like as I said, trying to keep the level of content that we've had in 2016. I don't know if we'll do more than that, but backfill some of these dates that used to have Damn You Hollywood with some other stuff. So that's what we got going. Like I said, long road to ruin. We've kind of reached the end of the line. But we got a new show. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about this idea. It was an idea that I toyed around with, like I said, earlier in the year, around the time that we were looking at the X-Men movies. So we'll see what happens, we'll see what happens with these movies. I mean, Sean and I usually have some pretty good conversations, and now I think Sean's biggest wish has finally come true. Christmas has come early for Sean Comer. Santa Claus has delivered a podcast that we don't have to rush through.
Oh?
Yeah. We finally can actually talk about a single movie as long as we want. I figured 2 hours ought to do it.
I might have deserved that. I might deserve that little jab.
Not a jab, but certainly we have both acknowledged that trying to shove 3 movies into, with 2 rather, and I'm including myself in this, rather boisterous personalities, we end up, look, how many times have I gotten to the 3rd movie and just went, stuff happened. Sean? We just don't have any time. I think we've had entire shows where I just go, the whole 3rd movie just gets cut basically because we run out of time. So that won't be an issue anymore. It's one of the nice things about what we're going to do here. All right. As we wait for Alexis here, I am going to just kind of get things rolling. Promise we jump right into this, and by jump I mean wait 20 minutes and then do it. So here we go. The last part of the Harry Potter series, the Deathly Hallows Part 1. We'll double back to some of this if Alexis comes. I'm going to say right off the bat. 1, I think this movie is unfairly criticized. We talked about the list on one of the previous shows, and this one was not ranked very high, if I remember correctly. I don't have the Rotten Tomatoes up in front of me, but I don't think it was scored very high there either. And
Hello.
Trying again?
Guess what time it is?
Hey!
Guess who fell asleep on the couch? I'm sorry, guys.
And the dumpster fire continues to burn ever higher.
All right, live, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to beauty herself, Alexis Hejna. How you doing, Alexis?
Doing well. Glad to be back. Glad to be slightly embarrassed.
Oh, it's okay. Listen to your voicemail.
Preferably later. All right, Alexis, I just sort of introduced. We're right into the Deathly Hallows here. Are you ready? Do you need a stretch? You ready to go?
I'm good to go.
Oh, good. Okay. 2 things right off the bat. I'll say them very quickly so we can get this going. I've already kind of talked about that I think this is kind of unfairly rated. I think it's rated too low. As a standalone movie, not even as part 1 of a larger story, but as a standalone movie, I saw a lot of good with this first movie. Some of the criticisms that I've seen is there's not enough in it to warrant a full movie, and I would beg to disagree. I saw a lot of similarities in this movie to actually the Fellowship of the Ring. To those who are sick and tired of me comparing this to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I apologize. But I could not help but notice, either purposeful or accidental, there were some allusions to the Fellowship of the Ring in this, at least that I could see. Anyway, but even if you don't see another Harry Potter movie before or after, I did feel like it was a strong movie and it could stand on its own with a few tweaks. The second thing I'm going to tell you right off the bat, Alexis actually posted something on Facebook about a lot of the emotional stuff in both of these movies. and I wrote a comment back to her saying I lasted all of a minute before I bursted into tears, and I did that because of the scene right at the beginning where she mind erases her parents and takes herself out of the pictures. I'm not going to get into a whole psychological reason why it affected me, but I started bawling. It really hit me hard. So I'm going to take a break and let kind of Alexis jump in here with some reactions and thoughts to the Deathly Hallows Part 1.
Well, I will go ahead and get this out of the way. This movie really shows how much it is bitten David Yates and the others on the ass when they show how much they have cut out of the previous movies. There are so many scenes that, if they had included in the previous movies, really would have actually made things a little bit more emotional, had a little bit more weight to them. Probably my best example that we can go for part 1 before we talk about part 2 is the scene with Dobby. Dobby's death, of course, is incredibly emotional, but the fact is that he has been a huge part in the last few books. As it turns out, in the 4th book, Dobby, after leaving the Malfoys, he's working at Hogwarts now. So he actually becomes a bigger part of Harry's life throughout the series. In the Triwizard Tournament, he's the one who gives him the gillyweed. In the Order of the Phoenix, he's the one who finds the room of requirement. And somebody needs to turn down their radio in the background because I'm getting a weird echo thing on my cell phone, and it sounds really weird.
I'll turn the volume down on my computer. Hopefully that helps.
All right, yeah, sorry. Every time I say something, I'm hearing my own voice in the background. I'm like, okay, that's going to go a little weird.
Yeah, Blog Talk Radio, and I don't know if it's my setup or it's just Blog Talk, occasionally produces an echo effect. It sort of comes and goes. So I just try to work through it.
But again, I feel that if we had had more scenes with Dobby actually doing the parts that he had in the previous stories, his death scene would have been so much greater. Because this isn't just a character who showed up briefly in the Chamber of Secrets and then showed up again here. So he's been helping Harry through everything. He's been by his side.
I would agree with you that Dobby's help in this just sort of comes out of nowhere. Not that I hated it or anything, but it does seem like he picked up a phone and phoned a friend to just suddenly appear the day. Though I take nothing away from his death. That made me sad both times I saw it. Sean, I think I heard you breathing in the background there. Did you want to jump in?
You heard me laughing in exasperated frustration.
Fair enough.
Suck the meatiest part
Go
of
ahead,
my
Alexis.
blog.
What else did you want to add?
Well, there is... Oh,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Alexis.
did you say Sean or me? Okay. Sorry, again with the echo, it was kind of hard to hear who you were talking to. I'm sorry. Okay, there is something else I want to talk about, Mark. If you remember when we discussed Order of the Phoenix about a week and a half ago, I brought up the scene that was cut from the book where they reveal that Dolores Umbridge was in fact the one who set the Dementors on Harry. You said that they were going to draw the line there, saying that maybe making her that evil was over the line, just a tiny bit. So I just said, we're going to stick a pin in that, and we're going to talk about that when we come back to the Deathly Hallows. You've now seen the part that Miss Dolores Umbridge played in the registration for Muggle-born wizards and witches in the movie. Do you still think that was over the line?
No. I can see your point in that it's very much in character for her. I'm going to stand by my point that dramatically in the movie we're talking about, I might have been a bit too much, but when you take a step back and you see her in the Deathly Hallows, it seems to fit. It's kind of like the Lucius Malfoy character in that sense, where the more you see him in these movies, the more character traits you start to see in him. And he also goes somewhat of a change. You know, by the end of the Deathly Hallows 2, when him and his family sneak off across the bridge, I mean, he's a broken man. And when you see him from where he starts to where he to where he lands by the end of that series, it all makes sense in the long view. So I agree with you in that sense that this character's name, who now escapes me, Umbridge, right? That's her name?
Dolores Umbridge, that's right. Dolores Umbridge, that's right.
In the long view of her character, sure. I think in the short view, in just that movie, still seemed a little suddenly mustache twirly. But, you know, I don't think that's one of those hard and fast things where there's a right or wrong, where I think it's more of a subjective thing. Before we go any further, I want to make sure Sean doesn't have any notes for us on the making of these. I know they were shot, I believe, at the same time, but as far as what they cut, what they left in, what some of the production history was, is there anything that you wanted to bring up, Sean?
Nothing much that's particularly interesting, except that it was part of that trend that kind of started with The Matrix and really continued through the Pirates of the Caribbean movies of let's shoot the two sequels immediately back to back. I got to imagine there are a lot of directors, producers, actors, the whole like, who would really like to just shove a steel-toed boot squarely up the ass of whoever came up with that idea. Oh, go ahead, Echo. I'll let you finish your thought. Must resist Lou Gehrig impression. Seriously. No, I really don't have any notes in that because I think I was mostly focused just on just kind of watching and enjoying the movies. And I, for one, for all the complaints people had about the pacing and everything, I was too caught up in just being a fanboy to really be a critic. Well, maybe not fanboy. Fanboy is the wrong term. That kind of implies that I would be that nitpicky. But just enjoying just how intense and violent and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Unflinchingly brutal this movie could be for what so many adults write off as books for kids and stuff that your average dignified grown-up person with a degree in adulting just doesn't read. So it was really hard for me to complain too much about it creatively. Like I said, fucking dumpster fire. And I totally get your Lord of the Rings comparison. 100%. And actually, that was kind of what I liked about it because, as I've said before, the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, the extended cuts especially, are three of my very favorite movies of all time. Just like barely a cut below Iron Man, The Shawshank Redemption, and The Blues Brothers. Oh, the echo's gone. Nito burrito with Cheetos. And it's weird. Alexis mentioned last week how Joe Rowling talked about she had such a hard time killing off her character, and how somebody made a pithy little George R.R. Martin meme out of that. But as you watch these, it's one of the few times you see a movie that's geared toward this kind of audience where, as I said before, death is death. Life ends even in the wizarding world, and there are no punches pulled here. There's no Deus Ex Machina that's bringing back Dobby, Fred, or Tonks, or Mad-Eye Moody. They're gone, and I appreciate that because it shows how far these movies have come from the first movies, where I could see how there would be a complaint that it really ignored there being a sense of consequence. Right up until Harry basically lampshades that very fact in later movies. But here, there's a cost to everything. There's a cost to war. There's a cost to standing up for what you believe in, which, again, they come right out of the gate and establish that, like Mark says. Hermione has no choice but to obliviate her parents, for all intents and purposes, for the purpose of protecting them. Because she knows that what she has to go and do is not only putting her own life and limb in danger, but it could possibly endanger the two people she loves most in all the world. And I've got a little bit of experience with sometimes having to, several times over, let go of people that you love, sort of both for your own good and for their own good. And it's not always life and death, obviously. We're not all Spider-Men who are desperately trying to keep Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy from having all of the pumpkin bombs dropped on their head by the Green Goblin. But that's a very real sacrifice that people have to make, and it's a theme of these movies that it's very easy for me to take to heart and to gravitate towards, and sometimes to even kind of look at and go, no, as much as I love these movies, that's just not something I can deal with right now.
I want to throw an idea out, and it will go, so in case we continue to have sound issues, know that when I stop talking, Alexis respond. When Alexis is done, Sean respond.
Okay.
The idea is this. First, let me quickly address a point that Sean made about the character deaths. Poor Mad-Eye Moody has the most unceremonious death. And as I say that out loud, oh yeah, that happens to Fred as well. People are dying off screen. Can work in one way, but I feel from the drama in another. I know it's Harry's story. This is Harry, and the more I watched this, the more I saw a very classical hero's journey in Harry, which is why when we get to part 2, I can safely say I more appreciated the ending this time than I did when I saw it the first time. But we'll get to that in a little bit. I could have afforded to spend a little less time with Harry and Hermione, and what became of these characters. I mean, you do it once. Mad-Eye Moody, is dead, and Harry says what he says after that sequence. Fine, I understood it then. But when all the Death Eaters start attacking at the end of the Deathly Hallows, and they've got these characters dropping off left and right, I'm like, can't we see some of this? Visual medium, people. And I'm sure it's expounded upon in the books. Alexis will, I'm sure, illuminate me momentarily. And movies are not books. Books are for burning. I need to see things on the screen. And it's one of the criticisms I have actually of Deathly Hallows 2 is there's a lot of stuff going on in these things. And again, I would go to the Battle of Pelennor Fields as a great example of you don't have to spend every living minute with your heroes. You can show other people, being affected by the events of this world and make it meaningful. That's actually not what I want to talk about. Just needed to address the Mad Eye Moody thing because I really like that character, and they gave him a lot of stuff right at the beginning, and then they kill him off screen, and I'm like, what the fuck? What happened here? It took me a minute to figure out even who they were talking about. So just as an aside. But I'm going to throw this idea out there now that we're talking about the beginning of the film. As much as I like the Deathly Hallows, and I have a lot of favorable things to say about it in the beginning of the show, my one thing I think I might have changed or cut is, and this might sound funny, it's why I want to talk about it, I wish they had started the movie with Harry and Hermione and Ron already looking for the Horcruxes. I wish we had skipped the wedding sequence. I wish we had skipped the car chase at the beginning, the broom chase, as it were, and the whole everyone's got to look like Harry thing. I got it. I understood the purpose of it. Still thought it was unnecessary. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of their journey and the arduousness of the journey, so that when Ron, while he's, I understood that the thing was kind of the Horcrux they were carrying around was kind of like the ring, in the sense that it was somewhat corrupting them, making them, or at least making them irritable. When Ron leaves, I would have liked a better lead up. Like I felt like they should have started with the raid on Gringotts to get the real Horcrux. I feel like that should have opened the movie, and then a little bit more, and spend a little bit more time with them on the road. If you're gonna say, Ron's listening to the radio to make sure he hears his family, show me more of that. Show me some framing around Ron and the radio, so that when he finally says, "Do you know why I do this? I'm listening to hear my family," and I think it makes the final blow up where he goes off that much more effective and emotional. I would have also liked to have seen him get the sword. No, it's Harry who gets the sword, but I would have liked to have seen Ron when he went off. I would have, they talk about it. He tells them what happened. I would have liked to have seen it. And there would have been room for it had they cut the nonsense in the beginning out. So those are some of my thoughts there. I wanted to start with Gringotts, expand the hard part of the journey, make a bigger deal of Ron blowing up, show a little bit more of that, and then the rest of the movie, I think, works for me. Alexis?
Well, I actually like the scenes in the beginning of part one. First of all, again, with Hermione erasing her parents' memories, I agree that is an incredibly moving scene. I kind of laugh, though, because so many people don't quite get the symbolism of her picture disappearing. Because I actually saw some comments online saying, apparently her parents are going to have to explain why they have blank frame pictures with nobody in them now. And I don't think the pictures were actually being erased. I think it was more symbolic of what she was doing. I think it was a directing decision, not an actual consequence of the spell. But there was so much that they really needed to establish before this. I think if we had jumped right in to the Horcrux hunting, it would have been too much too fast. I prefer to look at this and remember that Harry is not just doing this for himself or Hermione. He is doing this for the wizarding world. The wedding was, in the books, the wedding is preluded in Half-Blood Prince, Fleur. That is Fleur Delacour, of course, from Triwizard Tournament, marrying Bill Weasley. She comes back in the 6th book. And they establish how they know each other and, that they're engaged. And there was even a great scene at the end of The Half-Blood Prince where they talk about maybe they should cancel the wedding. And they say, I don't think that's what Dumbledore would want. I think Dumbledore would be happier knowing that there's a little more love in the world. The fact is that this is a country at war. Dangerous things are happening. People are disappearing. But these guys still want to live their lives. They still want to try to be happy. And it's not until they get that Patronus from Kingsley Shacklebolt saying, Minister's dead, Ministry's fallen, y'all better get your asses out of there. And I think it preludes a lot to the fact that, again, you compare so much of what happened in the Wizarding world to World War II before things really got bad. People knew that things were happening around the world, but they were still trying to live their lives. And I really think it's important to show that these characters still wanted to try to, just be themselves. I also think it calls back more to the fact that Harry really he's obviously in love with Ginny Weasley. What? Mark, what did you say?
It's fun having a delay, isn't it?
No,
first I said it's fun having a delay where I say something and I completely hear it. I was starting to say I don't necessarily agree with you. I think it is establish the world in which they spent so much time building in the other movies. And I know that the book is written a certain way, and so they have to be a little bit more faithful to the book. I think just from a cinematic point of view, you can do the wedding and you can do how that affects how Return of Voldemort affects the wedding as a microcosm of how the whole greater world is being affected. I don't think Harry needed to be there. I think we cut away from Harry, show the Ministry falling, show these people aligned with Voldemort sort of struggling with it, like the Malfoys do. I think that is one of the things I looked at with these movies is there's so much singular focus on Harry, that they don't make time for anything else unless he's directly involved, which I don't know. I don't like it. I would like to see the world existing, doing something else. Again, start with Gringotts, but then cut away to the wedding. Cut away to something else. What insistence that these main characters had to be a part of all these major events seems to handle the same sort of scope and don't do that. Clearly, it can be done.
Mark, one thing I don't understand what you're saying. You're saying start with Gringotts and then cut to the wedding. Gringotts happened in the second movie later down the road. Are you saying do like a flash forward kind of thing, or?
The 1 and 2. I thought the raid on Bellatrix's vault, where they grab the necklace. I thought that happens in the first movie.
Nope, the raid on the vault is in the second movie.
Huh. I apologize. Watching them back to back, I'm now confusing things up. I'm trying to think of what followed then. Once they. Oh, you know what I'm thinking of? They leave the wedding and they go into the city. And there's that elongated sequence where they're being chased by the Death Eaters and they blow up the cafe and all of that. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm confusing things. I don't know. So I have to sort of double back on the point that I was making. Still think, to sort of save the last 5 minutes of this podcast, still think we could have done a little bit more of Harry's over here, stuff is happening over there, and they don't necessarily have to be in the same place. I'll let you go ahead and respond to that, and then let's pitch it to Sean.
Well, again, I do like that they stayed with the opening scenes that they did, but I will agree that there are a couple scenes I really wish they'd fleshed out and actually filmed those even though Harry wasn't there. My particular favorite example is the Deluminator scene where Ron talks about the ball of light and hearing Hermione's voice come out of it. I think that would have been great to have actually seen that instead of just hearing Ron explain it like he did in the book. I think it would have been kind of cool to actually have that sequence of him hiding in the pub trying to sleep, and then he hears his name being said by Hermione. He wakes up a little bit, and he pulls out the Deluminator. Just even that little bit, I think, would have been really good to see. But that probably would have spoiled the surprise of having Ron show up and be the one who pulls Harry out of the frozen pond when he gets the sword of Gryffindor. So it has its consequences if you do want to. It would have looked cool, but it's like, what's more important, to have a really cool shot like that, or to have the surprise of Ron be the one who saves Harry from the frozen water?
Yeah, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Go ahead, Sean.
I don't have just a whole lot to add, except that I'll say that Alexis kind of changed my mind a little bit, because I did kind of agree with Mark in that at first I thought, well, it's really be a lot more fun if you'd get to more of the really thrilling stuff that we all kind of want to see. But then when I kind of looked at it the other way, I realized, no, if we're talking about really telling a layered story and really wanting to make this world feel deep and real and rife with this emotional connection, then you do have to show that, again, that theme of everything having its costs, the idea that this war has touched every corner of life in the wizarding world. So you do have to show both the parts that are interrupted and seemingly destroyed forever, and the people who are stalwartly determined to press on no matter the cost, like Bill and Fleur. So amidst all this and amidst all the really admittedly really unfortunate off-screen deaths and the characters who don't really feel like they do get a good demise, I felt like the first movie really balanced out well, compared especially with all of the actions and thrills and climactic clashes of the second movie. That's one of the reasons why I think it actually works as being split into two.
Okay. I know what my mistake was. I'm right. I just keep calling it the wrong thing. It's not Gringotts. You're right. That's the second movie, and that's the bit with the sword. And they're trying to get the Horcrux. That's the Hufflepuff cup. That's the second movie. That actually isn't what I was referring to. I'm referring when they drink the Polyjuice potion and invade the Ministry.
Oh,
right. I'd like to also add, I don't know who the three actors who played the disguised Harry, Ron, and Hermione were, but they did a really good job. I absolutely loved all the little nuances, the panic on their face. You forget for a second that that's not Radcliffe, Watson, and Grint, that those are three completely different actors. And I think they did a really good job.
I would absolutely agree with you. So to be clear, that's a great sequence in the movie. They obviously can't necessarily start with that because you still have to give them the Illuminator, the Tale of the Beetle, the Bard, and everything. So got to believe in this, but just to make myself clear, because I was being unclear by calling things the wrong name, open up with them on the road, and that mounting frustration of where the hell are all these Horcruxes, and just that sort of mounting frustration. It sort of comes down a little bit when they have this plan to go to the Ministry. I have to remember, it's the Ministry, not Gringa, to get into the Ministry, and then they can kind of move forward, and then you can cut away from that to the stuff that we were talking about before, like the wedding and everything. That now that I have the information in front of me, that was what I was trying to pitch.
So you're saying we could have done a brief flash forward to them and then done a flashback kind of thing?
Kind of. If you've never read the book, you don't know what order these things took place in the book. One of the fun things that you can do in an adaptation is, as Peter Jackson did with The Lord of the Rings, is, and we talked about this before, gave certain lines to certain characters that are, that were not in the book, or changed around some sequences. I mean, my father's talked often about how, the Two Towers doesn't end with the Battle of Helm's Deep. That's it's like something like a minus curse that takes 2 pages or some crazy thing that he told me. That it actually ends further into what they show you in the Return of the King movie. So I mean, there are ways to approach it that I think make it more effective cinematically. So that's what I'm saying is, never mind how it goes in the book. I would say this thing is happening, and the Ministry thing kind of happening at the same time, maybe. Starting with the Harry Potter stuff, and then cutting away to something else, and then cutting back. Other than that, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I didn't say anything. Sean, did you say something?
I'm sorry, Sport. I was thinking about.
Okay, I thought one of you was about to say. I thought you were going to chime in there, Alexis. That's why I said go ahead. If not, then we can move on.
If I did have to add anything, again, I think it comes down to, would it have been cool to film it and see it, or is it better to have the weight of the surprise? Again, you're talking about showing the Ministry falling, which would have been really cool to see. The Death Eaters kind of taking control, Shacklebolt, that's the new Ministry of Magic, being killed. But if we had seen that, would there be as much weight to the message that we get from Shacklebolt that Ministry has fallen, the Minister is dead, they're coming? So, again, it's like, well, would it have been as pointy? Because I remember in the book, when we got to that scene, we're in the middle of the wedding, everyone's dancing, and then the Patronus shows up, and you can feel just how everything just suddenly turns into, oh, crap. It just slams into a brick wall, turns around, and gets going in the other direction. You feel the weight of what has just happened. So,
those are all fair points.
Sean, what do you think? Sean, what do you think? Do you think it would have been less impactful if we had seen that before we got the message?
Okay, I'm sorry. I kind of missed part of that because the sound cut out. Could you please rephrase your arguments a little more clearly in the question?
Do you think the impact would have been lost if we had the scenes filmed and shown, rather than just being told what had happened?
I don't know. It's so hard to say because I've seen it and kind of accepted it the way that I've seen it. I guess I was at such a tough choice because that's kind of what amazes me so much about these two movies is normally when you have a movie that you have to split into two parts, it's easy to come to the assumption that it's probably a bit bloated, that they split it in two because they just wanted to wedge in every goddamn thing that they could. You know, like The Hobbit, all of a sudden going from 2 to 3 movies because Peter Jackson had a bunch of shit from the appendices that he wanted to shoot. That's an example of kind of extending something unnecessarily. On the other hand, what I like so much about these two is the challenge. Okay, well, you didn't really show this the way you could have, or you could have fleshed that out better. But then I go back and I watch it, and I go, man, can I really imagine that without some of this other stuff, though? And that's the part that I have a tough time with, because obviously, you know, you're talking about by the time you get through both movies, what are we looking at? North of 4 hours worth of a single story that we're telling? I'm like, well, you can either make this even longer or you can cut something. So I guess I would fire back with a question. What would you cut to actually show that? I mean, I'm open to having my mind changed, but that's the part that I'm having a tough time with, is it actually works really well as it is. So I'll just point blank just ask you and Mark, what do you cut, and how do you think that affects the movie if you take it out?
Well, I agree. I don't think there was
I'll
really
go
anything
first.
you could cut. Sorry, Mark.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Like I said, I don't think, and this is, again, a subjective opinion, that beginning chase adds anything to the movie. At this point, if you don't get that Harry, enormous amount of guilt for the people who have given their lives to protect him, reestablished in the first 5 to 10 minutes of this movie, which is all that's happening. You know, the entire bit of them secreting, getting him out of the Dursleys into a safe house. The whole sequence is a lead up to him wandering off and having Ron go after him. Have that exchange about, I don't need anyone else dying for me. This isn't just about you, stupid. You know, is Ron's response. This is much bigger than that. I just felt like this had been well-worn territory at this point, and it didn't need reestablishing. And I feel like the movie is stronger if we just start on the road already. At the end of the Half-Blood Prince, with them staring out into the distance, going, you know, and I mentioned this in the culture. He says, you know, I'm going alone, and Hermione says, I am you, and falls into the that's Lord of the Rings. No, she says, you're a great guy, but you're going with you, and has this look on his face of, we are. You know, so I'm expecting, because I forgot how the movie starts. As soon as you see the Warner Brothers logo, them on the road, and struggling with, we have absolutely no clue how to find these stupid Horcruxes unless Harry has a vision, and even then it's a bit vague. I think, you know, in terms of what do you cut so that you can show more, cut that whole sequence. Let's get going on the road. And I know Alexis feels differently, Certainly, you don't get to see Man-Eye Moody get killed, but you don't get to see him get killed anyway. So I don't know what you're gaining here. I'm going to let you have the last word on this, and then either let's move on to something else with the first movie, or let's move into the second one. Alexis.
Well, again, I do disagree. I think it was important to show how these events are affecting others, not just us three. And I do really prefer to start with the scenes that we did. Mad-Eye Moody's death. It is actually kind of quick in the book. It's done exactly like that. They show up and they go, Mad-Eye's dead. There is a really great scene in the book, though, where when they sneak into the Ministry of Magic and Harry sees that Umbridge has taken Moody's eye and is using it for her own personal lookout, he is just beyond furious. It's like how dare she do something like that? And he actually takes the eye before they leave, and later on, after they escape, he actually takes a quick moment and buries the eye in the woods. I'm going to give him this is all I have. I'm going to give him a proper burial. It's very sweet and it's a very cute little scene, and I do kind of wish they had kept that in because, again, she's got the eye using it, and it would have just been so great if Harry just couldn't have been like, you've got to be kidding me, just pried it off the door.
I have a direct question for you, Alexis, and in one of these rare moments where I need to know if there's more in the book on the subject. I was really into the idea of the Deathly Hallows and Voldemort's quest to find the Elder Wand. And I'm wondering if there's more to it in the book. The introduction of these things comes late in this movie, and then it ends with him grave robbing Dumbledore, which is fine and everything, but I'm going to say this out loud, and then you tell me if it actually happens in the book or not. To have seen sort of a parallel journey for Voldemort. I would have liked to have seen the anxiety and the urgency on Voldemort's part to find this weapon that he wants. And I would have liked more scenes of that happening instead of these flashes. These flashes that Harry has. I wanted to see full extended scenes of Voldemort on the hunt for this.
Well, unfortunately, in the books, all we do see of Voldemort for most of the movie is through Harry's flashes. They are connected because, as they established in the second half of the Deathly Hallows, Harry does contain part of Voldemort's soul, and he can see into his mind. There are a lot more scenes of him looking for the Elder Wand. It's not just so quickly paced. Furthermore, there's a scene at the wedding that actually establishes the Deathly Hallows a little bit more, which I kind of wish they had included, but again, it probably would have dragged on. You guys will remember that Luna Lovegood's father was wearing a necklace with the Deathly Hallows symbol on it at the wedding. That's how they started up saying we should go talk to him. He might know what that symbol is. Well, in the book, there's another guest at the wedding, Victor Crumb, the other combatant from the Triwizard Tournament. He was invited as Fleur's guest. And, of course, to hit on Hermione again. Well, he's talking to Harry, and he mentions the symbol around this. As it turns out, that symbol, the Deathly Hallows, has actually been used by Gellert Grindelwald as kind of his symbol. And to him, that's not a symbol of the Deathly Hallows. That's a symbol of a dark wizard. That's a symbol of dark magic. And it's kind of interesting because it runs parallel to the idea of the swastika. For those of you who know, the swastika was not created by Hitler and the Nazi regime. It was originally a symbol. It still is a symbol of peace in Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism. It is really only to Western society that image is now associated with something so evil. But for many parts of the world, they still don't see it like that. To them, it is still a symbol of peace. And I thought that was kind of an interesting parallel that one wizard would look at the Deathly Hallows symbol. He sees it as the mark of a dark wizard. There's others who say, we know what this was before Grindelwald took it. So I just thought that was an interesting parallel.
Agreed. All right. Sean, any last words on the Deathly Hallows Part 1? Things that we haven't talked about other than me trying to rewrite this film?
Not really a whole lot. I'm a little off my game because all the technical difficulties and everything have completely thrown me. Deathly Hallows 1 it's excellent. I would, there are a lot of people who would consider this blasphemy because how dare you compare these two? Harry Potter was so much better than Hunger Games. But the pacing is really not all that unlike a little bit of what the problem was with Mockingjay. You've got one movie that's very methodical, very slow. It isn't exactly action-packed. It's spending a lot of time with characters and building tension in a very gradual way. And it builds up to a very explosive finale. So I think you really have to be prepared for that because it's the only way to kind of tell a 4-hour story without telling it in one shot, because unlike the extended cut of Return of the King, this movie all cut together in one, well, it would be really quite disjointed because you would have half the movie that was, again, extremely methodical, doesn't seem like much is happening, and then all of a sudden in the second half, all of the things, everything goes to shit. And as for your issue about wanting to see Voldemort spending a little more time on his parallel quest, I actually kind of agree with that. Again, I don't know how you do it because that previous problem is this is one of the most tightly structured 2-part, 4-hour stories you will ever see, in my opinion anyway. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who would differ and just call me a flaming dipshit whose next shit should be a hedgehog. But I kind of reflect on the original 3 Star Wars movies and how in each of the movies, you do get to spend a little bit of time with Darth Vader. You get, and granted, there's really only so much acting that James Earl Jones can do as just a voice, and that the actor can really perform in that iconic suit, but you get a sense of the stakes for him as well, and really what his motivations are, and they become stronger from movie to movie to movie. You don't get quite so much of that here, I felt, with Voldemort. You got a lot of him scheming and executing, but it didn't really feel like you got a sense sometimes of what was really going through his head, of necessarily his own sense of desperation. Kind of like what you said. Would have been nice, but I mean, we're not just talking about substituting one scene for another. We're talking about adding a whole new thread, a whole new element, kind of a whole different backbeat to the movie. And unfortunately, I'm just not sure how you would pull that off. So
yeah, there would need to be some significant rewriting of this film. Time we've got at this point. So let's go ahead and move on to the Deathly Hallows Part 2, which revolves around two things really happening at the same time. Have you have the Death Eaters led by Voldemort who are going to assault Hogwarts. While they're doing so, you have the Death Eaters led by Voldemort who are going to assault Hogwarts. You have the Death Eaters led by Voldemort who are going to assault Hogwarts. You have the Death Eaters led by Voldemort who are going to assault Hogwarts. You have the Death Eaters led by Voldemort who are going to assault Hogwarts. You have the Death Eaters led by Voldemort who are going to assault Hogwarts. You have the Death Eaters led by Voldemort who are going to assault Hogwarts. You have the Death Eaters led by Voldemort who are going to assault Hogwarts. You have the Death Eaters led by Voldemort who are going to assault Hogwarts. You have the Death Eaters led by Voldemort who are going to assault Hogwarts. You have the Death Eaters led by Voldemort who are going to assault Hogwarts. You have the Death Eaters York. Harry and his friends have gone there to find the final Horcrux. And so it becomes, and I actually didn't get this the first time I saw it. It made more sense to me now. Basically, they don't know where the Horcrux is, and they're not even sure what it is until a little bit later on in the movie. And the Death Eaters are there to get Harry and to stop him from destroying this Horcrux. And so the whole thing is a big pray for time. You have Fool sort of out in front, stalling, essentially, stopping the Death Eaters from getting to Harry while Harry searches high and low for this Horcrux. That's basically the movie. What we find out, we get Snape's full story. We get his attachment to Lily and Lily Potter, and what he's done for Harry all this time. He's sort of been the man in the shadows, protecting Harry from this and that, because he loves Lily. Was what was established. You also get that, and this I missed a detail here, so we just sort of fill this in. But apparently, Dumbledore had been cursed, and I guess he allowed Snape to kill him, which had the added effect of making Snape look good in Voldemort's favor. If I've got a detail or wrong there, just tell me after. But ultimately, a big part of what's happening here is the rehabilitation of Snape's character once you find out all these other details. We learn that Harry has to sacrifice himself in order to defeat Voldemort. He is the last Horcrux, as it were. Part of Voldemort's soul is in him, and so there's this whole lead up to the sacrifice and then rebirth that happens, and then we have our final showdown. And of course, the best part of this movie is Neville's speech. I think we can all agree. People die every day. What the hell, man? It's great. Stand down, Neville. No, I won't. I love that bit. And of course, Neville's your big hero at the end of when he kills the other Horcrux, which is Nagigi, the snake. It was fun. It's a very urgent movie. Once it gets rolling, once they get to Hogwarts, and they know that doom is upon them, that Voldemort's forces have come, and the starts, and the melee ensues, and all of this is happening, and Harry is scrambling to try to solve a mystery. It's all great. It's all fun. I talked before about the sort of off-screen deaths. I'm not going to belabor or repeat that point, but that's one of the weaker elements of the second part is, again, too much time spent with Harry. Other than that, this is the one that I didn't really have any criticism of, in the sense of, here's what I do differently. I actually think this one's pretty perfect. I'll go ahead and end my run through of this movie by saying this. Claimed at the top of these shows that I wanted a more Warriors ending with Harry. I really wanted him to suck it to Voldemort. With that expectation now out of my head, and just appreciating what I saw in front of me and studying it, I actually did get something like that. There's a great bit. Grabs Voldemort, calls him Tom Riddle, and says, "Let's end this together." And they go off the roof, and they fly around for a bit, and then they land, and they have their final Wizards duel. When I say it out loud, I think that might have been what bothered me. There was a style of fighting in this movie seemed less than earthy, less than physical. You've got and there's a lot of this in Fantastic Beasts, by the way. so good at their magic that they fire their wands like guns, and then they just deflect them, and it isn't visually engrossing to me. And then, and it is what it is. I can live with it. It's just not particularly visually stimulating, I think. And then you have this duel where they're pointing their wands at one another, and it's a laser going back and forth. And while the end effect of Voldemort turning to ash and flying into the sky is fine, they've done this bit before with the wands pointing at one another, and just. Not that I wanted them to copy this necessarily, but just think about Return of the Jedi. I'm assuming we've all seen it. I know I have. I'm pretty sure Sean has. You've got Luke and Vader in this very emotional lightsaber fight. And it goes on for a while. And at some points, Vader gets the upper hand, and then Luke starts to get angry. You know, and there's a threat of them going after his sister if he won't turn to the dark side, and he flips out and nearly goes to the dark side himself. And at one point, he's just hammering on Vader up his hand, and he realizes, oh shit, I've gone a step too far. And then he kind of just throws his lightsaber away, and we all know what happens next. He gets force lightning until spoiler alert, Vader throws the Emperor into a pit. Very funny, by the way, adaptation of that in Robot Chicken, for those that care. That's, as far as final confrontations go, thinking about that as I watch this one, I have this very emotional sword fight, basically, that sort of ends in one of your hero nearly losing his mind. Harry and Voldemort, there was some fun stuff there, but that last bit, they're just pointing wands at one another. And I'm thinking to myself, really, emotionally, maybe we could have given this more oomph. Just a thought. So, not that I didn't like it. Like I said, I have accepted it. I have enjoyed it. I really did come away from that feeling like I got a satisfying ending. But there's this part of me that just wanted more emotion, wanted more visual stimuli. Throwing a lot out there, don't necessarily have to address it all, but I'm going to pitch. Go ahead, Alexis.
Kind of hard to jump in after all of that. No, I agree. It's actually kind of funny you kept bringing up the death scenes off screen because you mentioned Fred's death, and actually Fred's death is in the book, and it's pretty horrible. It's a really strong death scene. I remember the first time I read it, I mentioned this when we talked about Sirius Black's death scene, that I went back and reread. I'm like, no, I misread that. That didn't happen. I did the same thing when I read Fred's death. I'm like, no, she did not just, oh, God, she did. It's very hard to take in that character's been killed off, and it's a really compelling scene when he dies. You mentioned about Neville's speech. Neville, it's interesting because Neville is actually one of the strongest, bravest characters in the series. And again, this is something I wish they had mentioned. The prophecy that the boy will be born at the end of July, the one who will have the power to destroy the Dark Lord. The fact is that Harry was not the only child who that prophecy was could have alluded to. The other child was Neville, and he was so close to having Harry's life, and vice versa. The fact is that Neville came from two strong, brave Aurors, that his parents got a fate worse than death when they were tortured into insanity. And when he pulls that sword out of the sorting hat, which, going back to the Chamber of Secrets, only a true Gryffindor can do, you finally see the full crux of his character, that he he's always been a joke character. He's always been made fun of, but he is a true Gryffindor. He is brave. He is loyal. He is strong. He was not put into that house as a joke. He has always been a wonderful character. I love the scene where he pointed out his bruises and said, "Yeah, I was supposed to do the Cruciatus Curse on first years. I refused. I got beaten up for it." You know, he's making a stand. In the books, he is the one who's leading Dumbledore's army now, with Harry, Ron, and Hermione gone. He has taken up the charge, and it's just wonderful seeing this character who, again, we have just seen him get poked fun at and made fun of, and just been a total wimp. And no, he is none of those things. He is really such a compelling character, and I love that we see that.
Yes, he's a very strong character. I really by the end of this thing, I really liked him. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of him and Luna, actually. I'm sure there's more of that in the book, but it sort of comes out of nowhere in this movie, and then they leave it kind of nowhere. You know, they're sitting next to each other. It's inferred, and I don't necessarily need everything sort of just explained out to me, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of these movies that we've seen over the course of the last month are unnecessarily subdued in some ways than they needed to be. But maybe that's because I'm used to things in the movies being overly exuberant, overly produced. Michael Bay, can you hear me? So maybe that I'm just used to that, and so to see a movie draw back from that so much and more is inferred, and it's a little weird. Why don't you chime in here, Sean?
Well, I mean, first of all, this movie is a great story. It's a great finale. It's just, it's a finale you've seen before. I mean, it's an army of machines led by evil Queen Bavmorda descends upon Hogwarts in the heart of Zion and is met by an alliance of Ewoks and men led by Aragorn and Princess Leia, and they're all just trying to buy time so that Frodo can finish fighting Agent Smith and throw the ring into the fires of Mordor. It's your standard end to a hero's journey, right down to Harry conquering death and having his encounter with Dumbledore, who kind of sets everything straight, and then has his little Trinity at the end of the Matrix moment, where, oh God, gay Dumbledore tells the teenage boy that basically that he loves him, and okay, never mind. And then there was much fanfic. But like I said, it's a good story. It's a good story. You kind of know how it's going to end, especially if you've read the book ahead of time. Man, I really walked right into that whole Trinity and Neo thing with Harry and Dumbledore. I almost feel like that should be a Robot Chicken short now. I apologize, everybody. I swear I love this franchise, but I'm sorry. Even if you love something, you have to giggle at it every now and then. Take that from a longtime Highlander fan. But no, I too loved seeing Neville rise to the occasion and seize his moment. He is one of my favorite characters throughout the entire book. Alexis, remind me, I seem to remember that herbology, I think, was kind of the one subject that he did best in.
Yeah, in fact, they briefly mention this in the books during the epilogue, but he actually goes on to become professor of herbology in the epilogue that they mentioned something like say hi to Neville for us, and I'm like, we can't say hi to Professor Longbottom like that. So.
Yeah, I was gonna say I kind of like how, and this is just a brief little aside. I like how even the most heroic characters in this book, they're not all powerful. They all have something in which they're particularly, especially weak, and it humanizes them. Neville is historically god awful at potions, but he excels in herbology. Harry is an absolute prodigy in defense of the dark arts. I'm trying to remember. I think it was. Didn't he also do particularly badly in potions?
He did okay in potions until Half-Blood Prince, when he gets the advanced potion making book that helps him. But the fact is that he doesn't do as great in potions. Same reason Neville doesn't do is because Professor Snape is taking all of this anguish out on them. And I think it's something that a lot of people don't realize why Professor Snape is treating Neville so badly. Yeah, he's always been, even in the third book, Neville mentions that his worst fear is Professor Snape. That's why he comes looking like him when he sees the boggart. Snape is cruel to Neville because had Voldemort chosen Neville's family, Lily would still be alive. He looks at Neville and goes, he basically looks at Neville and goes, you should not be sitting here. Voldemort made the wrong choice. I am mad at you about this. And he takes a lot of his anger and frustration out on the boys because of that. Not saying he's right. It is still a bullying tactic, but I thought that was a really subtle touch.
And I'm glad you mentioned the whole thing with James and Lily and Snape, because that's a bit of history that I feel like really got short shrift throughout a lot of the movies. And I feel I get why it was necessary, but it was to the detriment of kind of adding something to Snape in places that I feel they could have, and also fleshing out kind of Harry's genes a little bit. And again, it also adds another element of something that's I won't say universally, but we'll say widely relatable in terms of the fact that in its own way, love really wins out for Snape in terms of how I'm sure had he been able to put it so bluntly, he would have probably said point blank to both of them, let's get something clear right now, friendo. James, I detest you. You suck. I remember everything you did to me. I've never forgotten it. I'm never going to forget it. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for her. I obviously won't go into details, but I've kind of been in similar situations, and that's a very conflicted, surreal feeling when that happens. As far as the rest of the characters, it's a movie where it's fun to get to see, kind of expectedly, of course, but the misfits really step up in some spectacular ways, and carry the day. But again, they don't do it in such a way where they inexplicably triumph over evil and somehow come away just utterly unscathed. No, people take a goddamn beating in this movie on both sides, and again, terrible costs. Hell, in this movie we have, Alexis, help me out. Was it Crabbe or Goyle that got cleansed with fucking fire?
Actually, they did it backwards in the book. I believe in the I hate to say it, I keep screwing up which one is which, but one of the actors who played either Crabbe or Goyle before making this movie was actually arrested, I believe, for drug charges.
Well, I think I could swear that he was. No, I believe he was a very naughty boy during the London riots.
Oh, I couldn't remember. It was one of those things. That's why during the scene in the Room of Requirement, when they're getting the diadem, there's this one black kid from Slytherin who's just like, who the hell is this? Because the other actress was obviously not available.
Oh, God, I didn't put two and two together and realize that was what fucking happened. That's what happened.
I think it's Crabbe who dies in the book, and it's Goyle who dies in the movie.
Yeah. I wonder what the spell is for kill him with fucking fire. Young adult movie. Complete with basically creation.
It's a very comical bit. I don't know. J.K. Rowling, we're some sure the help here. Go ahead, Sean.
I have no idea. The goddamn audio issues are still throwing my rhythm off. You were saying something about a comical bit and then something about J.K. Rowling, and then I lost.
Okay. Comical to watch him futz with his wand and have fire shooting at him. Or fire, whatever he says. Immediately, my brain went to Hans Solo, very famous New Hope, where he goes running after a group of stormtroopers. Sees very similar. The rings. You did a whole bit a few minutes ago where you took identify genres and made of it. And I'm just wondering if Rowling knew she was doing that. If she knew that there was all these allusions to famous fantasy, if it was just purely and maybe just some of the rhythms and notes tend to be they just don't.
I sort of got the gist of that query, because now, in addition to the fucking echo and the delay and us stalling for time for the first 20 minutes of the show, we can now add the fact that I caught every sixth fucking word of that. God damn it, Blog Talk.
Yeah, sorry, Mark, but we can barely hear what you're saying.
Fucking hell, this shit show audio.
Oh, good. This is just like that.
Okay, fine. I'll just say what's on my mind here. I don't know if it's something that she consciously came up with, because the fact is, Harry Potter, and I'm not saying this as a bad thing, I'm not saying it as a criticism, I'm just saying it as a thing. It has so many of the earmarks of Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces. It's a story and an arc and a progression that to escape it, you have to try so exhaustively hard that it shows when your narrative kind of just gradually devolves into contrivance, because you're exerting too much effort to kind of resist the flow. It sort of just isn't really just necessarily the flow of fictional characters, but it's a kind of maturation that you see reflected in real life all the time. Things that you could establish as metaphors to every hero's journey of every kind. You could probably just list the 100 greatest professional athletes, for example, dart in your hand and fling it at that list. And you would probably come up with somebody on there that if you wanted to really reach and be theatrical, you could compare it to the standard circular hero's journey. You could do the same thing with any number of great professional wrestlers of all time. If you were to chart practically the source of their entire career, you know, almost anybody's kind of run that full gamut from probably fucking Ric Flair to John Cena. It's not to be kind of woo-woo or overly spiritual or anything, but it's just part of the flow of life. So it makes sense that when you're kind of pulling these characters from the bottom of your heart and you have that connection to them, that in your head at any given time, it's like you've got this whole life of established memories with them. And they're friends and family and lovers and enemies and bystanders. Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense that you're just kind of going to go where the narrative takes them, and where it's going to take some people, depending on their position in the story, is going to look really damn familiar, especially when you consider where they've been already. And that's where our core heroes of the story end up. I mean, I think it's a matter of, it may be the same road leading to the same place, but over time and as seasons change, it takes on a different look and a different feel, and it still manages to become a different journey with every walk that you take down it, whether it's in a galaxy far, far away, or Middle Earth, or where the barrier between the wizarding world and the muggle world meets and both are in danger. It doesn't make it any less engaging or spectacular or heartrending when you experience it, because it's like sitting down to a favorite meal that's been cooked different ways. I mean, it might taste a little bit different, but it's still the same thing that you love. It's still the same thing that's endeared itself to you, and even though it might be a little bit different, there's still plenty about it that just can't help but warm your heart. So,
well said, very well said.
Oh, thank you.
There is one thing we haven't really talked about that I do think needs to be addressed before we wrap things up, and that is we really haven't talked about what in many people's opinion is one of the most emotional scenes in fictional history, the reveal of Snape's character. When we dive into the pensive and we see just how he's been affected all this time. And I mentioned this on my Facebook page last night. If you don't cry when you see Snape release the doe Patronus, you have no soul.
Mm-hmm.
I sobbed like a baby last night. It's been forever since I've seen that scene, and maybe it means more now that Alan Rickman has sadly passed away, and now that we have seen just how much the image of a doe and the one word always has just cemented itself into the Harry Potter world, into the fandom, that is just such an icon. Not just the lightning bolt scar, not just the broom, not just Hedwig, the doe and the word always. For many people, that's the most iconic moment of the entire series. And I really think that speaks volumes of just how impactful that reveal was.
Speaking of animals, why do they have to kill Hedwig? Not cool.
She got a better death in the movie. In the book, she's just hit by a stray spell. In the movie, she tries to defend Harry and gives her life. I think it's just mostly because when you realize that what were they going to do with Hedwig during this? You know, obviously Harry couldn't have a snowy owl with him. They mentioned in the 5th books that the owls are being trafficked and watched, and she's a snowy white owl. She grabs a lot of attention. That's not a common owl to have. You know, I agree that her death scene was horrible, and no one likes killing off the cute animal sidekick. Nobody likes doing that.
I know, still. Don't kill the owl, you dickwad.
All the deaths in this movie and in the book series, and the owl is what you call someone a dickwad over.
Well, yeah. Hedwig was awesome.
But yeah, so that was my 2 cents. I wanted to bring up the pensive scene with Snape.
I like
Sean, did you see the message I sent you on Messenger?
Did you send it just now?
I saw it. He said as soon as what did I see? As soon as we're done talking, you'll hit the outro.
No. Look, with my microphone problems such as they are, until I get this figured out, I don't want to keep interrupting the show with bad audio. So I was saying, you guys discuss the movie as much as you want, but when you're finished, let me know, and I'll take us out.
Okay, well, I don't know. Alexis, do you have anything else you want to add?
One thing I do want to point out is that it's something I've come to realize J.K. Rowling is truly magnificent for her writing, is the foreshadowing and the early planting of seeds and how they really grow into something. My favorite example being in Deathly Hallows Part 1 that we get to see the Deluminator again. This was seen just briefly in the first book and in the first movie when Dumbledore arrives on Private Drive and he uses it to darken the street, and it has not been seen again. But the fact that they brought it back, I really like that. And again, so many little tidbits here and there start to add up. You realize she really planned this all out so spectacularly, and it's really brilliant. Which unfortunately is more than I can say for David Yates, because I feel that foreshadowing and planting things early is not his strong point. There are so many things that obviously left out for time in the previous movies, which really did screw them up. I was joking with a friend of mine earlier today because when I was watching the Gringotts scene, and they get there, and all of a sudden Harry can hear or sense the Horcruxes, if you will. Obviously, there's a problem because in Half-Blood Prince, we have the scene in the book where he actually sees the Hufflepuff cup. Dumbledore says that he's pretty sure that is one of the Horcruxes because he's pretty sure that Voldemort would have wanted something, like he had something from Slytherin, he could get something from Hufflepuff, and he wants something from Ravenclaw. He wants his Horcruxes to be symbolic of the founders of Hogwarts, the first place that he really felt at home, for the place that he wanted to return to.
Mm-hmm.
I just had this image in my head when they were getting ready to film the Gringotts scene, and David Yates and the producers just realized, oh crap, we have absolutely no build up to how he would know which one is the Horcrux. And they just kind of looked around like, quick, somebody make something up.
The Force.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like, wow, Deus Ex Machina saves the day, bravo. Yeah, again, I do enjoy the movies, but I honestly feel that David Yates needs to work a little bit better on his foreshadowing.
It could be worse. If this shit would have been going down in the Buffyverse, Harry would have just gone on the internet.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I'm making a prediction right now, guys. I know that we still have a handful of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movies coming out. Side note, saw Fantastic Beasts, great movie, really enjoyed it, highly recommend it. I am predicting that within, I'd say, 15 years, maybe 20 is absolute most, but in probably about 15 years, we are going to get a full Harry Potter reboot.
Oh, yeah.
And but I don't think they're going to do the movies. I think we're going to do like a Netflix or a Hulu or an Amazon series.
You know what? I could live with that.
I think Harry Potter is going to get rebooted and get the Game of Thrones treatment.
You know what? I would be A-okay with that because I'm glad you mentioned Game of Thrones because Game of Thrones and Harry Potter, I think, are two of the very few just general series, the overall worlds of any genre of literature that have been created in the past, we'll say 25 years, that could really be called bona fide, timeless classics. Just works that I really believe are going to stand up every bit as well 40, 50 years from now as they do today. There have been a lot of popular franchises and kind of beach reading bestsellers that have come and gone in that span of time. Obviously, there's Twilight, there's the Hunger Games, there's the Millennium Trilogy, there's
Divergent.
Yeah, there's Divergent. There's Dan Brown's Robert Langdon novels. All of those, and they're all. Oh, okay. I'm not going to throw 50 Shades and Twilight in there. Obviously, they all have their merits. 50 Shades being this is how you write. This is how you don't write good. But I think those are the main two that I can think of that in terms of just everything you could describe in terms of visuals, world building, emotional investment, action, story. Those are the ones that I have a feeling when I turn. Well, yeah, you're gonna start humming the damn Beatles song, I know. But when I'm 64, hey,
if I didn't do it, nobody else would.
That's why I warned you it was coming. And you know, when I'm crazy old Uncle Sean, that's the last resort for my friends and my sister to leave their kids with when they got to go on vacation for a while or something. Yeah.
And Jeremy, John, Ray, you've all been warned.
Yeah. You know, those are the books that if they're big readers and they get bored, I can pull those out and tell them that these were some of the most popular books in the world when I was their age, and I think they'd really enjoy them. And you know what? I'm willing to bet that nothing about these stories, these characters, all these emotions and memories that we have tied to them are going to feel old. You know, not the way it is with some stories when, you know, Alexis, you or I read them in high school, and there was just something about them that, you know, that just everything was of another time, not just the setting, but the language, just every single little thing about them. and made them a little bit harder to relate to. But on the other hand, Westeros and the Wizarding World, those are two creations that I get the feeling are going to go down alongside Narnia, alongside Middle Earth, just among those instantly recognizable classic places and examples of really not just great books, but true classic literature. And it's wonderful. I feel so privileged that I grew up during a time when I got to see them committed to film, well, and in Game of Thrones case, television, in a manner that just couldn't have done them more justice than they did, to the point where there's so few things that you would ever do differently. That is so few things that you didn't see that you could really ask for that makes any of these movies really feel like a disappointment. We got absolute career-defining performances, not just from the likes of child actors who grew into greatness like Tom Felton and Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint and Emma Watson, but also performances for which an entire generation, the first time anybody mentions Alan Rickman, I can guarantee you there's going to be 3 movies they're going to think of first out of everything that wonderful man did during his life. And it's going to be Die Hard, Dogma, and Harry Potter.
I was going to say Galaxy Quest instead of Dogma, honestly.
You know what? Robert Winfrey would probably cast an unforgivable curse on me if I didn't throw that one out there. So yes, I would certainly, by Grabthar's hammer, throw Galaxy Quest in there too. And he's not the only one. You know, I mean, Michael Gambon is such a fucking accomplished actor with such a spectacular resume. Yeah, Maggie Smith. She's going to be remembered for Downton Abbey and Minerva McGonagall. You could go down the list with so many more. How about one of the great last appearances of Warwick Davis? Yeah,
who,
that's.
I'd like to point out we sadly also lost this year.
Yeah, that's true. I completely forgot that he passed away this year too. Warwick Davis. First 3 things I'm going to remember him for are Willow, Leprechaun, Harry Potter. It was a jumping off point for some, and it was a spectacular late career addition to their legacy for others. And it's just obvious in every scene how Daniel and Emma in particular grew and learned so much and became well-rounded performers from sitting under the learning tree with these. In fact, if you ever really want to hear Daniel Radcliffe just being a really cool regular guy, can't recommend highly enough. Go watch his episode of WTF with Mark Maron. Well, not watch, it's a podcast. Listen. Go listen to his interview, because it also includes Daniel talking about how he really fell nasty into a drinking problem during his latter years making Harry Potter. I believe it was Gary Oldman that he said really kind of talked him down and snapped him out of it and got him to start taking himself seriously, in no small part because Gary recognized just what a spectacular career he could have ahead of him, and how
So there's another actor that we can add who will have Harry Potter as one of his iconic moments of all time.
Iconic is stretching it because by this point, Gary has done so goddamn much already that he's going to be the ones for whom, I was Sirius Black is going to be kind of a footnote. Probably.
I disagree because Sirius Black is still to this day one of the favorite characters in the series. And Ullman played him so well, especially in the third movie. I really loved how he was seen as still kind of unhinged when they corner him in the Shrieking Shack. That he didn't get out of Azkaban completely with all of his marbles intact at that moment. He was still a little driven by madness.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, prior to this, we have to remember he was Dracula, Mason Verger, Sid Vicious. I know I'm forgetting something. It's Gary Oldman. His entire resume is so extensive. It's goddamn impossible to keep all of them straight. This was pre Jim Gordon, obviously. And as a side note, as we pointed out before, the Doctor came along and did the world a favor by trying to get to rid the world of Edward Cullen. You tried, David Tennant. You tried. Yeah, it was.
Robert Pattinson is not a terrible actor. He has done other things that were quite good, and this could be seen as a great stepping-off point for him. This was the first movie that he really got his name out there for.
Well, yeah, exactly. And before David Tennant was, before he was Casanova, before he was the Doctor, before he starred in Broadchurch, this was kind of where he was unleashed upon an unsuspecting world. So that's a lot of history to cram into 8 movies. And obviously I don't know if I'm going to be like Mark and have 2 little crumb snatchers of my own. That's up in the air. Alexis, you're married, you never know. You and Andre may one day decide that you want to have a couple little tree climbers.
It's like I've got a couple of crumb snatchers who are currently biting each other's ears right now.
Yeah, well, you keep in mind, I lived with one of those for a number of years. He literally is a crumb snatcher.
Yeah, so is the other. I have 2 dogs, ladies and gentlemen, a Cocker Spaniel and a Welsh Corgi, who, are currently running around the house like somebody just gave them crack.
It isn't the crumbs you have to worry about with Toby. It's the fries you have to worry about him snatching.
The fries and the salmon.
Oh yeah. You leave salmon within about 10 yards of him, and you all of a sudden realize that you have a little speedster on your hands.
Whereas you give any kind of human food to Eddie, and he will spend the next 15 minutes jumping up and biting your fingers because he assumes that if there was food there once, there must be food there again.
But, I'm not sure really what else we can say about these books, about these 8 movies. Except if you haven't read them, if you haven't seen them, if you're not put off by the fact that we just spoiled the entire goddamn thing, go. You go watch, you go read, now.
Especially emphasis on there was one thing we completely forgot to talk about, the animated sequence.
Animated sequence?
In Deathly Hallows Part 1. The Tale of the 3 Brothers. Again, this is a brief footnote, but I'd say that was an absolutely brilliant way of doing the exposition on the story. I love the animation style. They kind of made it look like they were marionettes, CGI marionettes, if you will, and it looks so gorgeous. And I absolutely loved that sequence.
It actually, it reminded me of the opening of Hellboy and the Golden Army.
I could see that. But again, I thought that was just I really enjoyed that. Not to mention, that really brings in further the whole idea that so much of the Harry Potter stories what they're really about is death. But not just, people dying, but the idea that death is not something to fear, and it is not something to push against like Voldemort does. Voldemort's greatest fear is death. That's why he made the Horcruxes. That's why he sought the Elder Wand. He was terrified of death. But the fact that Harry has the invisibility cloak, and yes, it is confirmed, that is one of the Deathly Hallows, he has the original invisibility cloak. The idea is that death is not something to push back, because remember, the brother in the story who had the invisibility cloak, in the later years, he greeted death as a friend. The idea is that death is an inevitable part of life, and we shouldn't fight it. I'm not saying, go kill yourselves, all of you, but, what did Dumbledore say? Don't pity the dead. Pity the short lives of the living, or something like that. But I really think that was really an important part that wasn't overly hyped and wasn't really crammed down our throats, but a subtle touch by J.K. Rowling. The idea that, yes, death will happen. Death is inevitable, but death is not our enemy.
Well, with that being said, for the second to last time ever's on Long Road to Ruin, Alexis, real quick, I'm going to throw it to you for the first set of plugs.
Wow, I come off of death is not our enemy to our plugs.
We're running out of time.
Fine, let me get off the soapbox. Yes, as I mentioned before in our previous podcast, I run Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic, currently selling out of Etsy, handmade at Amazon, and Store Envy. We have tons, and I mean tons, of new merchandise that we have put out for the holiday season. Not just the new Harry Potter merchandise. We've mentioned this before. We have our customizable Patronus charm bracelet. We have our Houses of Hogwarts and Houses of Illival-Mornay. Brett, I'm probably massacring the name of that school. We have just added our brand new superhero line. We have Avengers. We have Justice League. We have Defenders. We have the Lantern Corps. We have all your one-stop shopping needs for the holiday season if you're looking for the perfect stocking stuffer for your fellow geek.
Well said. Be sure to go and like us on Facebook. And by us, I mean both Honeysuckle Rose Creations and also the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. As for me, I really don't have just a whole lot in the way of plugs, although this coming Sunday, if you like some professional wrestling and you can't happen to make your way over to WWE Network to watch WWE TLC be main evented by WWE Champion AJ Styles defending against Dean Ambrose in a ladder match, well, then you are in luck because you can just head right over to FPGnews.com where, for the second pay-per-view in a row, and that's right, not pay-per-views more than the second Network Special Spectacular Hullabalooza in a row, I will be providing live segment-by-segment coverage all evening long, all of the results, provided that WWE Network doesn't make a Trumpy-Dumpy in the bed again.
Really just love bringing out that old MST3K reference, don't you?
It's my favorite MST3K episode. Oh, Trumpy, you do stupid things. Oh, look, new potatoes. MST3K, Pod People. You can find it on YouTube. Go, watch, laugh yourself into a mirth coma. That's me. As we pointed out before, December 13th, join us for the Viking funeral for Long Road to Ruin. Myself and the mandated reporter, frankly, he mortifies us all, Mark Radulich, will be reviewing the 3 Flavors of Cornetto trilogy. That is Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and, fittingly, the very last movie we will be talking about to close out 4 years of Long Road to Ruin proper will be The End of the World. A good time shall be had by all. I'm sure that Blog Talk Radio will bend us over the table and stick a cucumber up there until it snaps off again. because God knows this was a clusterfuck on top of an orgy of clusterfucks tonight. But still, we had a great time. It has been a spectacular month talking about a wonderful, timeless 8-movie set. I would like to thank my long time friend Alexis Hejna for stopping by to chat about her favoriteest franchise in the world with us. I would like to thank Mark Radulich, as always, for being the world's single greatest broadcast partner. I would like to thank all of you for listening live and downloading. Without you, there would have been no 4 years of us, for better or for worse, till Blog Talk Radio fucks us, shall we part. So, for Alexis, Hejna, Toby, and Eddie, for the mandated reporter, the no pants man of the Florida clan, Mark Radulich, I'm Sean Comer. You're not. Thank you for listening. $20 will still buy mini peanuts. Never dull your colors for someone else's canvas. And Mark, take us out with our very special outro. Good night, everybody.
La 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 la
Hey guys, thanks for watching. We'd like to give a very special thanks to our good friend Rosanna Pansino for lending us her